Hi, my name is Tanner Ams, and I'm the youth minister at St. Margaret's Episcopal Church in San Antonio, Texas. Today we're on week 3 of our series, Love Thy Neighbor, and today we're going to be talking about loving your enemies, which is referenced in Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 48. The scripture reads, "You have heard that it was said that you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous." Jesus, like last week, presents us with this tough teaching. It comes from a piece of the Gospel of Matthew called the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus basically gives a sermon on a mountain. Very inventive title, I know. Here, Jesus presents teachings that go deeper into the law of Moses, really focusing on the heart of the issues, which is our hearts and our intentions. These teachings say that the actions, not doing the thing that is instructed, is the bare minimum. What really needs to change is our attitude and our intention. So we have this teaching, love thy neighbor, and Jesus expands it and says, love your enemies as well. We've heard from the past couple of weeks that we don't get to choose who our neighbors are, and Jesus points out that we are also called to love and pray for our enemies, those who are opposed to us. Sometimes I think it's hard for us in America to really identify someone who is an enemy to Christianity in our midst. Sure, there are people that disagree with us and that we may not get along with or think the same things theologically or philosophically, but no one is actively trying to destroy us as an enemy would. Jesus, in this story, is probably referring to the Roman Empire, which ruled over Israel and had for a while. The Romans were people who had subjected Israel to external rule and not allowed for them to govern themselves. Rome had taken taxes and money from the people that it had conquered. And so it's a radical thing for Jesus to tell these Jewish people to love the Romans. Soldiers of the Roman army were not known to be the nicest people, and the tax collectors were very hated because they were allowed to collect more than was necessary just to make themselves wealthy. And Jesus instructs the people who are gathered there to love the Romans, to love the soldiers, to love the tax collectors, and to pray for them. Here in America, there may not be a one-to-one comparison between these two groups of people, the Romans and the Jews of Israel. But we do have people that we don't get along with very well. I don't know that I would go so far as to call it being enemies. But it's still hard to love the people that you don't get along with very well. People that have different ideas than you have, either politically or philosophically or even theologically. But Jesus says, those that are opposed to you, those who are different from you, those who you don't get along with well, those are the people you should be loving. Those are the people that you should be praying for. An interesting example of this I found on the internet several years ago, and it's one of my favorite videos on the entire internet. It's the story told by Johnny Lee Clary about his interactions with Reverend Wade Watts. You see, Johnny was a leader of a KKK group, and Reverend Wade Watts was a black clergy person who was the target of a lot of the attacks of the KKK. Johnny tells the story of how Reverend Watts met every horrible action and hateful word that the KKK did towards him with love and humor, and never sought to pay back with more hateful actions. I'll let him tell the rest of the story, but it's an incredible look at a man who I feel really took this teaching of Jesus to love your enemies and to pray for those who persecute you to heart, and really allowed that to be lived out in his life in the Reverend Wade Watts. I've put the link to that video in the description. Please go and check it out and watch that video. It's a little bit older, but I think it's got just a wonderful message of how a practical example of loving your enemies. So this is a tough teaching. Who is it that you think that Jesus is calling you to love in this way and to pray for? Maybe somebody you disagree with or don't get along with very well. Here's the challenge that I give to you. Even if you don't necessarily mean it, still pray for that person. Still act out that love in how Jesus tells us to pray for those who persecute us. As you do that, I believe God will work on your heart and you'll be able to do it easier and easier every time. This may not fix everything that's broken between you and this other person or this group of people, but it will be incredibly beneficial to you. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you have a wonderful week.